Manipulation is the hidden language of business, the unspoken grammar of every boardroom, every negotiation, every handshake that conceals a dagger. You see it in the way promises are made lightly and expectations are calibrated like instruments, each word weighed against the shadow of potential gain or loss. To deny it is to place yourself on the altar of someone else's ambition, to hand over your strategy as if it were charity. Power does not pause for morality. It advances through leverage, influence, and the silent coercion of circumstance. Those who fail to recognize this do not fail through lack of talent, but through lack of vigilance. Observe, every alliance is a contract written in invisible ink, legible only to those who read the currents beneath the surface. Every favor extended is a seed planted with the expectation of harvest, and every smile hides a calculation, a vector of advantage aimed subtly at the heart of your intention. The world does not reward honesty. It rewards the ability to anticipate, to maneuver, to exploit the fissures in human desire. To enter this theater unarmed is to become a prop, to exist as a pawn while others orchestrate the game. Understand this. Loyalty is transactional. It bends, it breaks, it shifts with the wind of circumstance. Those who swear allegiance to you do so with a ledger in their mind, counting your successes against their potential benefit. Fear is easier to manage than affection, yet even fear is a volatile currency. You must calibrate it, dose it, release it in measured quantities, never so much that it consumes your own authority. Control is not an act of cruelty. It is a discipline, a daily practice of observation and subtle persuasion, of knowing which strings to pull and when to let silence carry the weight of your intent. Ambition is a beast that feeds on opportunity and neglect alike. It will arise in your subordinates, in your peers, in the partners you trust. You must neither repress it completely nor allow it to roam unchecked. Instead, channel it, redirect it, harness it for the machinery of your enterprise. Those who cannot recognize the currents of ambition around them will find themselves swept aside by it, replaced by actors more cunning, more patient, more ruthless. In every conversation, in every deal, there is an undercurrent, a network of desires, fears, and calculations that determines the true outcome long before the contract is signed or the public applause begins. Expect betrayal. It is the shadow that walks beside every handshake. It is not a matter of if, but when. Those who have betrayed you before will betray again, unless bound by an interest stronger than sentiment, and those who have never betrayed you are only untested. To survive, you must maintain a vigilance that borders on paranoia, a detachment that preserves clarity in the face of flattery, intimidation, and deception. The world will not warn you of the knife behind your back. It only provides you the tools to detect it. The rest is practice. Observe the theater, for appearances are the currency of influence. A reputation is neither earned nor lost in private reflection. It is forged in the perception of others. Appear stronger than you are, more virtuous than you are, more certain than you are, and those around you will adjust their own behavior to the image you present. But do not mistake the mask for the self. It is a weapon, not a confession. Your actions must be governed by consequence, not by the comfort of conscience. Every concession, every public smile, every act of generosity is a calculated deployment, a movement across the board designed to shape perception and limit the range of threats. In business, as in war, the terrain is never neutral. People, resources, information, each is a landscape to be mapped, understood, and, when necessary, reshaped. Do not assume that your environment exists to favor you. It exists to challenge you. Those who survive and dominate are those who read it clearly, who manipulate its channels, who redirect its flow toward their objectives. The naive believe that work alone earns reward. The wise understand that work is only effective when synchronized with influence, leverage, and strategic control. Silence is a tool, more precise than speech. Words betray intention. Silence conceals it. A pause, a measured omission, a refusal to react immediately, these are instruments to probe, to unsettle, to reveal the weaknesses of others without exposing your own. Conversation is a battlefield, and the one who listens most often dictates the terms. Do not be quick to declare, to justify, to rationalize. The world is full of those who confuse verbosity with power, and they are the easiest to outmaneuver. Every human is a vessel of contradiction. They desire loyalty but seek opportunity, crave freedom but obey necessity, exalt virtue while practicing vice. To master manipulation is to understand these contradictions, to anticipate the collision of desire and fear, to exploit the space where their intentions diverge from their words. It is not cruelty to act in accordance with reality. It is folly not to. Those who cling to idealism in the marketplace of power are quickly consumed by it, replaced by those who recognize that survival and success are measures of strategy, not sentiment. Influence is invisible and therefore irresistible. You do not coerce through force alone. You guide, direct, insinuate, and channel the currents of ambition, fear, and desire. You create dependencies, cultivate needs, and offer solutions that serve your purpose. The most effective manipulation is unrecognized, so subtle that those subjected to it mistake your design for their own decision. It is the hidden architecture of every outcome, the framework upon which every victory is built. Do not confuse knowledge with power. Information is abundant, insight is rare. Observing, interpreting, and applying knowledge strategically is what separates those who wield influence from those who are wielded. Each decision is a node in a network of cause and effect, and every miscalculation multiplies across time, echoing in unforeseen consequences. The ruler, the CEO, the strategist, each is defined not by intention, but by the clarity of vision and the precision of execution. To be feared is not enough. To be respected is not enough. You must be understood, perceived, and anticipated. Your actions must create patterns that others rely upon, even as they distrust you. Predictability is weakness when it invites exploitation. Unpredictability is weakness when it erodes confidence. The mastery of perception is as critical as the mastery of force, for no advantage survives that is not reinforced by belief. Do not confuse action with wisdom. Movement without strategy is a spectacle for others to exploit. Every decision, every gesture, every overture must be weighed against the invisible ledger of advantage and risk. Those who act impulsively are consumed by consequence before their intent can manifest. Observation precedes influence, and patience is the currency of the powerful. Watch, measure, and calculate, for the smallest lapse in attention can unravel the most intricate design. In silence, in restraint, in the careful orchestration of presence, you assert dominion without declaring war, commanding without overt display. Do not seek to be loved. It is an unreliable measure of authority. Love is ephemeral, contingent on the continuance of benefit and the alignment of desire. Fear is durable only when tempered with fairness, when it becomes a compass for behavior rather than a chain of resentment. Yet reliance on either, unmodulated, is folly. The ruler who misjudges the balance between fear, respect, and incentive invites instability into the foundation of power. Manipulation is not malice. It is anticipation, a preemptive shaping of outcome through the alignment of others' instincts with your objectives. Every interaction is a test, a negotiation of hidden motives. Words are rarely what they seem. Promises are instruments, and silence is a signal. To misread them is to cede control. The observant recognize patterns of desire, aversion, and dependency, and they deploy them with precision, orchestrating outcomes that appear spontaneous to the unaware. Even the closest confidants, even those who profess unwavering loyalty, are vectors of self-interest, their actions refracted through the prism of ambition and survival. Knowledge of this allows the practiced operator to navigate a terrain that others stumble through blindly. Ambition, left unexamined, is a predator. It circles, tests, and strikes when opportunity intersects with vulnerability. The subtle leader converts it into a tool, redirecting its force toward collective or personal advantage without extinguishing the spark that drives it. To repress ambition entirely is to stifle initiative. To ignore it is to risk being consumed. It is a river that must be channeled, guided, and sometimes dammed, with the understanding that human desire is both fluid and relentless. Anticipate its course and construct the channels through which it will flow, lest it erode your position from within. Expect betrayal as the constant companion of trust. It is not a flaw of character, but a structural condition of power. Those who act out of pure loyalty are rare, and even then, loyalty is often conditional, contingent upon circumstance and perceived benefit. To be vigilant is not cynicism, it is realism. To prepare is not paranoia, it is survival. The clever manipulator positions themselves such that even betrayal serves a purpose, either revealing weakness in others or consolidating strength in oneself. One learns to absorb duplicity as a method, transforming potential threats into instruments of advantage. Appearances are the scaffolding upon which influence is constructed. Strength must be visible, decisiveness must be legible, and competence must be evident even when obscured. Those who underestimate the theater of perception mistake subtlety for weakness. Influence thrives in the space between reality and perception, and mastery lies in maintaining the illusion without surrendering substance. Every gesture, every statement, every public display is a brushstroke in a larger canvas, shaping belief and expectation with calculated nuance. Silence is as strategic as speech. It provokes, conceals, and compels reflection in the observer. The premature declaration of intent is a surrender. The measured pause is leverage. Those who speak first often reveal themselves. Those who speak last dictate the terms of discourse. Conversation is an arena where listening governs power more than speaking, and the ability to extract information without disclosure defines the margin between command and subjugation. Words are tools, but restraint is the edge that turns them into weapons. Every human is a confluence of conflicting motives. Desire collides with fear, principle contends with convenience, loyalty wrestles with self-interest. To manipulate effectively is to perceive these fractures and to operate within them, not against them. Control is exercised not by denying reality, but by bending it, by anticipating the behavior that arises naturally from human instinct and guiding it toward predetermined ends. It is neither virtuous nor ignoble, it's simply island. Influence extends beyond overt action into the architecture of dependence. By providing solutions, by shaping needs, by constructing dependencies, one becomes indispensable. Decisions are then filtered through your lens, even when others believe they act autonomously. This subtle coercion, invisible yet absolute, is the marrow of power, the lattice upon which authority is secured. It is an orchestration that requires patience, foresight, and a ruthless attention to consequence, for even the slightest misalignment in perception can unravel the most intricate designs. Do not mistake knowledge for mastery. Information is plentiful, insight is scarce. The adept interpreter discerns patterns where others see chaos, applies foresight where others react, and aligns action with consequence where others stumble. Each choice, each maneuver, each negotiation resonates through a network of outcomes, magnified by time and circumstance. The operator of influence understands that strategy is an accumulation of small, precise actions, not the flourish of sudden brilliance. The cultivation of perception is as critical as the exertion of power. Predictability invites exploitation. Opacity breeds uncertainty but demands respect. To be feared, respected, and anticipated simultaneously is the apex of influence, where one's presence alters behavior before action is required. Authority is consolidated not through mere demonstration, but through the perception of inevitability, the silent agreement of others that your direction is the axis upon which events revolve. The machinery of control is invisible, yet omnipresent. It moves through corridors of influence, through subtle nods, delayed decisions, withheld information, the strategic placement of trust and suspicion alike. Every hand extended is measured, every alliance weighed against potential gain, every concession calculated for both immediate benefit and long-term leverage. The naive imagine that decisions exist in isolation, that acts of generosity or concession are understood as kindness. The wise recognize that all human interaction is a vector, a force with direction and magnitude, capable of shifting balance without notice. To wield influence is to manipulate these vectors, to adjust the course of events without leaving trace, to act decisively in ways that appear unforced. Power thrives where perception and reality intersect. Strength must be suggested, competence implied, control maintained in the minds of others before it manifests in action. Those who underestimate the subtlety of impression are consumed by those who master it. Reputation is the scaffold upon which authority is built. It is fragile yet formidable, dependent upon consistency, calculated display, and the occasional performance of deliberate unpredictability. To manipulate perception is not deception for its own sake. It is alignment of belief with intent, shaping the expectations of others to create a landscape where your will is inevitable. Anticipation is the weapon of the prudent. Every word spoken, every document signed, every meeting convened contains the seeds of advantage or catastrophe. To recognize patterns before they manifest is to gain the initiative, to shape the outcome even before opposition fully comprehends its trajectory. Human behavior, while seemingly chaotic, follows currents of fear, desire, and self-interest that can be charted, understood, and directed. The master of manipulation reads these currents as the navigator reads the stars, constantly adjusting course, avoiding reefs, and steering toward opportunity. Loyalty is conditional, mutable, and ultimately transactional. Those who profess allegiance will measure your success against their own ambition, recalibrating devotion to align with benefit. Even the most steadfast supporters are vectors of self-interest. To ignore this is to surrender control. Power is maintained not by expectation of loyalty, but by anticipation of deviation. To position oneself such that every potential betrayal can be turned to advantage is the hallmark of the strategic mind. One absorbs deception as a method, integrates it into decision-making, and converts vulnerability into leverage. Fear and respect are currencies of influence, but both are instruments to be calibrated. Excessive fear breeds resentment and rebellion. Insufficient fear invites contempt and insolence. Respect must be earned, perceived, and reinforced, but not so visibly as to reveal weakness in command. The operator of power measures these elements continuously, adjusting tone, gesture, reward, and restriction to maintain the balance that secures obedience and minimizes risk. Emotional detachment is not cruelty. It is clarity, the capacity to observe and act without distortion, to see the anatomy of behavior without idealization. Every environment is a theater of opportunity and threat. Business, politics, alliances, even friendships are landscapes to be mapped and understood, each actor a variable, each circumstance a terrain to be exploited. Those who act without comprehension of the environment are swept aside by those who interpret it with precision. Observation precedes engagement, patience precedes action. Strategy is not impulsive brilliance, but the accumulation of foresight, anticipation, and calculated movement. One must remain constantly aware of the unseen forces that shape every decision, for the world operates independently of morality, sentiment, or expectation. Silence is more than absence. It is articulation. It conceals intent, provokes disclosure, manipulates perception. To speak too soon is to surrender initiative. To listen with attention is to command it. Conversation is a battlefield, and the one who extracts information without revealing position gains the upper hand before engagement even begins. Words are instruments, but restraint is the edge that sharpens them into precision. Those who mistake noise for action are easily outmaneuvered by those who wield silence as strategy. Human desire is predictable, though often obscured by artifice. Fear, ambition, greed, pride, these are the currents that drive choice. To manipulate effectively is to navigate these currents, to guide impulses toward outcomes that serve one's design without inviting recognition. Power is exercised through alignment, through shaping what others seek to achieve so that it converges with your own ends. The clever operator uses each instinct as a tool, each motivation as a lever, each miscalculation by others as a vector of advantage. Dependence is constructed subtly, by providing solutions, by shaping expectations, by cultivating reliance. One creates an architecture of influence. Those dependent on you act within your sphere before you intervene, their choices filtered through invisible constraints. This is not domination through force, but through design, a quiet assertion of authority that multiplies across time and circumstance. To cultivate this is to create inevitability, a condition in which outcomes bend toward your intent before the necessity of action is manifest. Knowledge alone is inert, insight is operative, understanding patterns, discerning motives, anticipating consequence, these are the instruments of mastery. Action without comprehension is gambling. Strategy without foresight is fragility. The adept observer interprets the landscape, aligning moves to both immediate objectives and the extended horizon of influence. Each decision resonates, each maneuver echoes, each subtle alignment compounds into structural advantage. The operator understands that mastery is built in layers, each small adjustment magnified through the network of human behavior and institutional structure. Perception governs consequence. Predictability invites exploitation. Opacity demands attention. To be both respected and feared requires an equilibrium of display and concealment, of action and restraint. Authority is consolidated not in demonstration alone, but in the belief that your decisions are inevitable, that the architecture of influence flows naturally from your presence. Those who can manage perception effectively render opposition reactive, their actions constrained by expectations crafted long before engagement occurs. Opportunity is always conditional, never guaranteed. It arrives masked in uncertainty, in hesitation, in the blind movements of others. The prudent do not wait for clarity. They act where advantage intersects with timing, where hesitation is exploited as a vector of control. Indecision is the currency of the weak. Action aligned with foresight is the hallmark of mastery. Those who anticipate the flow of events, who read the hidden undercurrents of ambition and fear, position themselves to convert contingency into inevitability. To be prepared is not merely to survive, but to direct the course of what others perceive as chance. Deception is not dishonor, it is strategy. Those who mistake the honest display of intent as morality are vulnerable to the manipulation of those who understand that appearances are instruments, not truths. Every misalignment between what is seen and what is orchestrated is an opportunity to guide outcomes, to extract advantage, to consolidate control. The operator of influence recognizes that human cognition is limited, biased, and predictable. By shaping perception, one shapes action, and by shaping action, one shapes consequence. Power is a landscape, not a moment. It extends through networks, through dependencies, through the architecture of decision-making. To secure it, one must attend to both the visible and the invisible, the public gesture and the private contingency, the overt negotiation and the subtle conditioning of expectation. The margin between success and failure is often imperceptible, defined by the accumulation of minor adjustments, the anticipation of subtle shifts, the orchestration of influence before it becomes necessary to act overtly. Mastery is patience multiplied by insight, guided by relentless calculation. Fear is not merely a tool, but a signal. It reveals priorities, exposes vulnerability, and indicates the thresholds of obedience and resistance. Those who act without comprehension of fear's influence miscalculate the terrain, exposing themselves to resistance they cannot control. Yet fear must be tempered. It is most effective when it exists alongside respect and the perception of inevitability. The judicious blend of intimidation and credibility stabilizes influence, making compliance appear rational and rebellion costly. Human relationships are leverage. Every connection is a channel through which information, influence, and advantage flow. Allies are temporary, rivals are predictable. Every interaction contains a vector of opportunity. Those who exploit these connections with precision convert social networks into instruments of power, aligning motives to ensure that actions advance their own strategic interests. Trust is not naive belief, but the manipulation of expectation, the orchestration of interdependence that secures influence without the necessity of coercion. Control is exercised in anticipation of resistance. One must understand not only what others desire, but how they will act when denied, when challenged, when confronted with consequences. Every obstacle is a signal, every act of defiance a clue to the hidden calculus of ambition and fear. To navigate this landscape is to act with foresight, to construct contingency, to convert potential opposition into instruments of advantage. The skilled operator recognizes that survival is inseparable from the ability to direct the environment before it directs you. Silence and action are complementary forces. Speaking reveals position, movement announces intent, and premature disclosure invites exploitation. Conversely, measured restraint, deliberate omission, and carefully timed intervention produce leverage, shape expectation, and constrain the choices of others. Influence is less about what is said, and more about what is perceived, less about what is done, and more about what is anticipated. Mastery emerges when perception and reality converge in a manner that appears natural, inevitable, and unquestioned. Ambition, when left untended, is a wild current. It can serve you or sweep you aside. The operator channels it, aligning the desires of others with objectives that serve strategic ends. By providing opportunity, by shaping reward, by constructing frameworks within which ambition acts predictably, one converts potential volatility into structured advantage. To ignore the force of desire is to invite chaos. To harness it is to multiply capacity. The adept manipulator understands that human nature is a river, sometimes turbulent, sometimes placid, but always flowing toward interest and gain. Betrayal is not an anomaly, it is a structural inevitability. Those who presume constant fidelity are blind to the dynamics of power. Even the closest allies recalibrate loyalty according to circumstance, advantage, and self-interest. The wise leader anticipates deviation, prepares responses, and positions betrayal as a lever rather than a threat. To absorb deception, to convert it into insight, to redirect its energy toward consolidation, is to operate above the ordinary morality of trust, where survival and authority are maintained through comprehension rather than sentiment. Influence is cultivated in layers, subtle and persistent. One shapes environment, expectation, and perception simultaneously, such that even apparent autonomy aligns with strategic intent. Decisions are filtered, options constrained, behavior guided without overt compulsion. This architecture is invisible but formidable, a lattice of dependency and anticipation that magnifies the power of the operator while minimizing visible exertion. It is in these subtle structures, often unnoticed by those subject to them, that true authority resides. Knowledge is inert without application. Insight is operative. The world presents patterns, behaviors, and consequences, but only the attentive can discern them and translate them into structured advantage. Small, precise interventions, repeated and aligned with longer trajectories, produce compound influence. The operator of power understands that brilliance is rarely the sudden act, but the meticulous accumulation of understanding, observation, and controlled intervention. Strategy is a long shadow, cast by preparation, anticipation, and disciplined execution. Perception is the medium of power. Predictable actors are vulnerable. Opaque actors are respected and feared. To be anticipated, yet retain the ability to shape outcome, is the apex of influence. Authority is not merely demonstrated. It is ingrained in expectation, accepted as inevitable, and internalized by those who operate within your sphere. By managing the beliefs of others, The operator ensures that the environment responds to presence before action is even necessary. Every act, every gesture, every decision is a negotiation with consequence. The landscape of influence is dynamic, composed of shifting motivations, fluctuating fears, and mutable alliances. To navigate it is to operate continuously at the intersection of observation, anticipation, and subtle intervention. There is no respite from calculation. There is no sanctuary from consequence. Only through perpetual awareness, disciplined restraint, and strategic foresight does one secure advantage, maintain influence, and survive amidst the currents of ambition and duplicity that define human interaction. The architecture of manipulation is silent yet structural. It permeates every interaction, every dependency, every expectation, by shaping needs, by guiding perception, by calibrating restraint and exposure. One constructs inevitability. Influence becomes natural, compliance appears voluntary, and the flow of events bends toward design. To wield this is neither moral nor immoral. It is the execution of foresight, the exercise of understanding, and the orchestration of human behavior in alignment with strategy. Authority is neither granted nor inherited. It is constructed, maintained, and defended through constant attention to the levers of human behavior. Every interaction, every decision, every appearance contributes to the edifice of influence. To neglect even the smallest gesture is to introduce weakness, to allow unpredictability to seep into a system that demands precision. The operator of power understands that stability is rarely given. It is imposed through structure, expectation, and the subtle orchestration of consequence. Each subordinate, ally, and rival moves within the gravitational field of perception, and the skilled manipulator ensures that this field is shaped deliberately, bending instinct, ambition, and fear toward desired outcomes. The art of advantage is anticipation. To react is to yield initiative. To anticipate is to command it. Human action is predictable when examined through the lens of desire and insecurity. The clever strategist converts predictability into leverage. Decisions made without full comprehension of these currents are accidents of circumstance. Decisions informed by observation, foresight, and subtle influence convert chance into inevitability. Time itself becomes an instrument. Delays measured, opportunities cultivated, the rhythm of engagement orchestrated so that others act within frameworks shaped long before they recognize the architecture surrounding them. Manipulation is structural, not incidental. One does not act merely to deceive. One acts to align perception with intent, to constrain choice without visible compulsion, to make compliance appear rational. This is the invisible governance of influence, where the apparent autonomy of others is both the mechanism and the reward of strategy. Each action, each omission, each carefully timed disclosure carries weight beyond the immediate, creating layers of expectation, dependency, and behavior that multiply effectiveness without overt force. The master of power constructs these layers with patience, precision, and awareness of the human propensity to seek advantage while believing they act independently. Trust is a transaction, not a covenant. Those who presume constancy in the loyalty of others fail to grasp the inevitability of self-interest. Every commitment is measured against potential gain and adjusted to circumstance. To wield power effectively is to anticipate this fluidity, to create contingencies, to transform potential betrayal into leverage, and to convert observation of intent into structured action. The wise recognize that human devotion is conditional, and that the architecture of influence must account for deviation before it occurs, positioning even disloyalty as a vector of advantage. Silence, observation, and timing are instruments of control. To speak is to reveal position. To act prematurely is to surrender initiative. The operator of influence cultivates restraint, allows patterns to emerge, and chooses the moment of intervention with precision. In these intervals, one gathers intelligence, observes tendencies, and manipulates expectation. Words become measured signals, actions become coordinated forces, and the environment itself is conditioned to respond predictably to presence and strategy. Mastery is not the sum of visible acts, but the alignment of the unseen currents with strategic intent. Ambition is both tool and hazard. It drives action, shapes alliances, and motivates behavior, but it also breeds volatility, miscalculation, and opposition. The effective strategist channels ambition, creating conditions under which it aligns with design, converting potential chaos into structured advantage. By shaping opportunity, calibrating reward, and constraining perception, one directs human energy without the necessity of force. Desire becomes a mechanism of influence, a river whose flow is guided, whose direction is controlled, whose energy is multiplied to serve strategic ends. Betrayal is a constant, unavoidable dimension of human interaction. Those who assume fidelity as a natural state invite disaster. The prudent anticipate deviation, prepare contingencies, and convert acts of treachery into instruments of advantage. By understanding the motivations and limitations of others, by positioning response before occurrence, one transforms betrayal from threat into mechanism, integrating unpredictability into strategy rather than succumbing to it. In this calculus, even disloyalty becomes a predictable and manageable variable, one whose energy can be harnessed rather than feared. Influence extends through perception, expectation, and subtle shaping of circumstance. To control outcomes is not always to command action directly, but to construct an environment in which action conforms to desired trajectory. This is the architecture of inevitability, behavior guided by anticipation, choice constrained by perception, decision aligned with intent. Power is exercised invisibly, its force amplified through networks, dependencies, and the conditioning of response, rather than through overt compulsion. Those who fail to comprehend this operate within a theater of forces they cannot see, subject to outcomes they cannot control. Knowledge without application is inert. Insight without execution is wasted. The environment, the actors, the currents of ambition and fear present patterns to be discerned, interpreted, and integrated into strategy. The master does not wait for perfect information. Action is taken within probability, informed by observation, anticipation, and subtle influence. Each engagement is measured for both immediate gain and long-term positioning, each interaction leveraged to reinforce authority, align expectation, and secure advantage. Mastery is the product of cumulative foresight, applied relentlessly, consistently, and without emotional distortion. Perception is the medium through which control is exercised. Predictable patterns invite exploitation. Opacity commands attention. Authority is sustained not merely through acts of power, but through the belief in inevitability, the impression that outcomes are natural extensions of presence. By managing what is seen, heard, and anticipated, the operator ensures that the environment bends toward design, that opposition reacts within pre-constructed limits, and that behavior aligns with strategic intent before intervention is necessary. Every decision is a negotiation with consequence, every interaction a vector of influence. The human landscape is dynamic, defined by shifting motives, fear, desire, and ambition. To navigate it requires perpetual observation, disciplined restraint, and strategic foresight. There is no sanctuary from consequence. There is no relief from calculation. Only through continuous awareness, precise intervention, and subtle orchestration can influence be maintained, advantage secured, and survival ensured. The structure of manipulation is both visible and invisible, apparent and concealed. By shaping needs, calibrating perception, and guiding behavior, one constructs inevitability. Influence appears natural, compliance seems voluntary, and outcomes align with intent without overt force. This is the essence of strategic mastery, the orchestration of human behavior through anticipation, insight, and disciplined action, where morality and sentiment are irrelevant and effectiveness is measured by result. The world is a landscape of currents, vectors, and forces, and those who navigate it successfully convert observation into action, insight into leverage, and anticipation into inevitability. Every gesture, every word, every decision resonates beyond its immediate context, creating structures of influence that multiply across time and circumstance. Power is maintained in the accumulation of these subtle adjustments, the careful orchestration of expectation, and the relentless alignment of perception with intent. Those who misunderstand human nature, who act without comprehension of ambition, fear, and self-interest, are swept aside. Those who act with clarity, who calibrate influence, who anticipate reaction, command both respect and inevitability. To manipulate is not an act of immorality, but an exercise in foresight, the translation of insight into outcome, and the shaping of environment to align with strategic purpose. Mastery is the relentless, precise, and patient execution of this principle across every interaction, every connection, and every sphere of influence. Every alliance carries with it the potential for both strength and peril. The operator of power evaluates each connection not by sentiment, but by utility, resilience, and the alignment of interest. Even the most devoted ally harbors self-interest. Even the most cordial exchange contains vectors of leverage. To engage without scrutiny is to surrender control. To engage with anticipation is to convert relationship into instrument. Each conversation, each negotiation, each subtle exchange becomes part of the latticework of influence, a structure within which action is guided, expectations are managed, and outcomes are molded before they manifest. Fear and respect are not interchangeable, yet both are essential in the architecture of control. Fear reveals limitations, exposes weakness, and compels attention. Respect anchors compliance, legitimizes authority, and stabilizes influence over time. The judicious leader balances these forces, employing intimidation where compliance must be immediate, cultivating esteem where obedience must endure. The failure to calibrate these energies results in instability. Excessive fear breeds rebellion, untempered respect invites disregard. Mastery emerges not from the amplification of one at the expense of the other, but from their precise orchestration in concert with circumstance. Opportunism is a constant threat and a perpetual tool. Those who perceive openings act. Those who do not are acted upon. The adept strategist cultivates situational awareness, anticipating not only the movement of allies and rivals, but the subtle shifts of context that produce advantage. Every contingency, every hesitation, every vulnerability is mapped and evaluated. By understanding the impulses that drive behavior, by forecasting likely responses, the operator converts chaos into structure, unpredictability into leverage, and potential threats into instruments of authority. Deception is not an art of mischief. It is a method of construction. By aligning perception with intent, by guiding expectation, by selectively revealing and concealing, one molds the landscape of action. The observant recognize only what is allowed. The skilled manipulator determines what is allowed to be recognized. Trust, compliance, and engagement are engineered rather than assumed. The operator does not compel through force alone, but through the orchestration of belief, desire, and anticipation, creating an environment in which obedience appears rational and advantage appears inevitable. Control is exercised in anticipation of disruption. Human ambition is volatile, desire is mutable, and loyalty is conditional. The practitioner of influence anticipates deviation before it occurs, positions resources to absorb dissent, and transforms the momentum of rebellion into alignment with strategy. By predicting behavior, constraining options, and structuring incentives, one ensures that the flow of events bends toward design. The absence of foresight is vulnerability. The presence of foresight is authority. Every action is a preemption, every gesture a calculated intervention, every silence a vector of influence. Observation is both shield and weapon. By attending to micro-behavior, subtle speech, and the rhythms of interaction, the strategist discerns intentions, weaknesses, and opportunities invisible to the inattentive. Knowledge extracted in this way is not passive, it is operational, informing decisions, shaping action, and amplifying leverage. Each insight becomes a tool, each recognition a point of intervention. The adept operator understands that influence is cumulative. Minor adjustments, timely interventions, and precise calibrations yield strategic advantage over time, producing outcomes disproportionate to the effort expended. Ambition must be guided as carefully as it is unleashed. Left untethered, it produces chaos. When channeled, it generates power. The leader converts the energy of desire into predictable, structured action, aligning individual goals with strategic imperatives. By offering calculated incentives, constraining choice, and shaping expectation, one ensures that the flow of ambition serves design rather than randomness. Human desire becomes a river whose currents are directed, whose energy is harnessed, and whose force amplifies authority and consolidates control. Betrayal is inevitable, yet manageable. Those who presume constancy in the loyalty of others mistake human nature for idealism. Every commitment is provisional, every allegiance conditional. The wise anticipate the moment when self-interest will realign, and they prepare contingencies that transform potential disruption into leverage. To absorb betrayal without collapse, to convert disloyalty into insight, to channel deviation into strategic advantage is the hallmark of mastery. One does not merely survive treachery, one deploys it as a mechanism of control, a predictable vector within the architecture of influence. Influence is layered, structural, and enduring. It extends through networks, dependencies, and perception, creating patterns of behavior that operate beyond immediate oversight. Compliance emerges not from coercion alone, but from expectation, from the conditioning of behavior, and from the orchestration of perceived inevitability. The operator constructs these layers with meticulous care, understanding that the most enduring power is subtle, integrated, and often invisible, felt more in the alignment of action than in the exercise of force. Knowledge becomes authority only when applied with precision. Observation, anticipation, and intervention transform insight into leverage. Decisions are not reactive. They are premeditated, shaped by continuous assessment of shifting dynamics. Each engagement is measured, each exchange evaluated, each outcome anticipated. Mastery is not episodic brilliance. It is the disciplined accumulation of advantage, the relentless calibration of influence, and the integration of foresight into the ongoing architecture of control. Perception is the medium through which authority flows. To be feared or respected, to be followed or deferred to, requires the shaping of what is seen and believed. The operator ensures that presence aligns with expectation, that gestures communicate competence, that decisions reinforce inevitability. By managing perception, one channels action without confrontation, aligns behavior without coercion, and ensures that influence operates both visibly and invisibly, seamlessly integrated into the environment itself. Every interaction, every choice, every moment is a negotiation with consequence. The human landscape is mutable, complex, and driven by shifting motives, fears, and desires. To navigate it demands constant awareness, disciplined patience, and strategic foresight. There is no escape from calculation, no retreat from consequence. Survival and authority are contingent upon the continuous alignment of observation, anticipation, and subtle intervention, shaping outcomes before they emerge and bending circumstances toward design. The architecture of manipulation is invisible, yet pervasive. By shaping perception, guiding behavior, and structuring response, one constructs inevitability. Actions appear natural, compliance seems voluntary, and outcomes conform to intent without overt force. Mastery lies not in the exertion of power alone, but in the orchestration of environment, expectation, and anticipation, ensuring that influence propagates through networks and dependencies before explicit intervention is necessary. Power thrives in the spaces between action and perception, in the silent intervals where influence takes root unnoticed. Every decision made, every gesture offered, every word spoken carries ripples that extend beyond immediate consequence. The perceptive operator cultivates these ripples, directing them subtly, ensuring that behavior conforms to the contours of expectation. Influence is not a blunt instrument, but a precise mechanism calibrated through observation, anticipation, and disciplined intervention. To neglect the unseen currents is to cede control to forces beyond comprehension. To master them is to command outcomes with a precision that appears effortless, almost natural, to those swept within the field of influence. Every ambition, every desire, every calculated risk exists within a lattice of observation and expectation. The operator recognizes that human behavior is rarely chaotic when viewed through the lens of self-interest and fear. Patterns emerge, tendencies reveal themselves, opportunities manifest where insight meets patience. To manipulate is to identify these structures and to apply force along vectors of natural movement, converting the momentum of others' ambition into instruments of strategic design. Control is exercised, not through arbitrary command, but through alignment, not through coercion, but through orchestration. The inevitability of betrayal is not a vulnerability, but a parameter within which mastery is defined. Human loyalty is provisional, contingent, and measured against shifting advantage. The shrewd strategist anticipates divergence, positions contingencies, and transforms treachery into opportunity. By understanding the impulses that drive action, greed, fear, envy, aspiration, one converts the unpredictable into the calculable. Each deviation becomes a mechanism for reinforcement, each act of disloyalty an input to a system designed to maintain equilibrium, project authority, and secure advantage across time and circumstance. Observation is both the shield and the blade. The operator of influence discerns subtle signals, interprets hesitation, and measures the alignment of desire and perception. These insights are applied not haphazardly, but with precise timing, creating conditions under which outcomes are guided toward design. Action is not always overt. The invisible hand of anticipation shapes the theater of engagement. Each encounter, each conversation, each interaction becomes a vector for influence, with consequences that extend beyond immediate visibility. Mastery is measured not in spectacle, but in the alignment of intention, perception, and response. Fear and respect, though distinct, function as dual engines of compliance. Fear accelerates action, compels attention, and enforces boundaries. Respect anchors stability, legitimizes authority, and nurtures enduring influence. The operator calibrates these forces with exactitude, knowing that imbalance produces instability. Too much fear ignites rebellion. Too little respect invites disregard. The equilibrium of control is maintained not through instinct, but through deliberate observation, structured consequence, and the orchestration of perception across multiple layers of engagement. Ambition, like a river, must be guided lest it overflow its banks and destroy the infrastructure it nourishes. The leader channels aspiration, aligning it with strategic objectives, structuring opportunity so that desire becomes an instrument of design. Incentives are measured, constraints anticipated, and perception calibrated, ensuring that human energy flows along preordained vectors. Desire is not suppressed but harnessed. Ambition is not feared but directed. The currents of action are navigated to maximize effect without invoking overt resistance. Manipulation is structural, systemic, and enduring. By engineering perception, guiding expectation, and constraining choice, one ensures that action conforms to design before intervention is required. The environment itself becomes an instrument, with social currents, political currents, and economic currents aligned to reinforce authority. Influence propagates invisibly through anticipation, subtle intervention, and the conditioning of behavior. Those unaware of these forces act as instruments in a preordained symphony of outcomes, their seeming freedom, a testament to the operator's mastery. Trust is not assumed, it is engineered. Every commitment is evaluated, every alliance measured against potential gain, and every interaction scrutinized for leverage. Loyalty is neither absolute nor permanent. It is a variable to be anticipated and managed. By constructing networks of influence, by positioning contingencies, and by translating observation into strategic action, the operator converts provisional allegiance into functional stability. Even disloyalty is accounted for, anticipated, and integrated into the architecture of control, ensuring that unpredictability is absorbed rather than threatening. Knowledge without action is inert. Insight without execution is wasted. The strategist operates continuously, interpreting patterns, anticipating responses, and calibrating interventions. Each decision is informed not only by observation of the present, but by projection of probable future states. Every interaction becomes a data point, every hesitation a signal, every response an opportunity to adjust the field of influence. The sum of these actions is not chaos, but architecture, a lattice of consequence in which power is exercised with precision, subtlety, and enduring effect. Perception is the medium of authority. To be feared, to be respected, to be deferred to, one must manage what is seen and believed. Presence is constructed, gestures calibrated, and decisions communicated to reinforce inevitability. By shaping perception, the operator ensures that compliance emerges organically, that behavior conforms to design without direct imposition. Influence flows through networks and dependencies, through expectation and belief, often invisible yet palpably effective. The operator's hand guides the currents of action without overt exertion, demonstrating mastery in the seamless integration of intent and outcome. Every interaction, every word, every choice is a negotiation with consequence. The human landscape is mutable, volatile, and defined by self-interest, fear, and desire. To navigate it requires unbroken attention, disciplined patience, and continuous calibration of action. There is no reprieve from calculation. There is no exemption from consequence. Authority and survival are sustained through relentless awareness, subtle orchestration, and strategic anticipation, ensuring that events unfold in alignment with premeditated design and that advantage is secured in both the immediate and distant horizon. Influence is invisible, pervasive, and enduring. It extends beyond the reach of force, operating through expectation, conditioning, and structured environment. Compliance emerges not from domination, but from the alignment of perception and desire with strategic design. The operator constructs these conditions meticulously, integrating multiple layers of influence, ensuring that outcomes align with intent before overt action is necessary. The mastery of power is measured in subtlety, durability, and the predictable shaping of behavior across temporal and relational dimensions. Every maneuver, every calculated silence, every measured disclosure is an instrument of control. The operator does not act for applause or acknowledgement. Actions are judged solely by consequence. Information is currency, observation is capital, and perception is leverage. To reveal too much is to dilute influence. To conceal too completely is to invite suspicion. Mastery emerges in the careful calibration of disclosure, the selective illumination of truth, and the orchestration of what is permitted to be known. Each revelation is deployed with strategic intent, shaping the environment, conditioning expectation, and guiding behavior toward desired outcomes. The landscape of ambition is littered with illusions of loyalty. Those who appear devoted are often guided by self-interest, and those who seem indifferent may be instruments of advantage yet unrecognized. The shrewd operator recognizes that loyalty is never granted freely. It is extracted, cultivated, and maintained through anticipation of desire and management of consequence. Alliances are treated as dynamic systems, constantly monitored, adjusted, and reinforced. Each commitment is provisional, each promise a tool, each action a signal within the architecture of influence. Control is exercised through the manipulation of expectation. Human behavior is not random. It is shaped by anticipation, fear, desire, and precedent. By understanding these vectors, the operator converts potential chaos into predictable outcomes. Incentives are structured to guide action, deterrents are calibrated to prevent deviation, and perception is engineered to sustain compliance. The effective exercise of power is less a matter of overt command than of subtle orchestration, where the flow of events is guided invisibly, and obedience emerges as a natural response to the environment. Fear is a tool of immediacy. Respect is a mechanism of longevity. The operator deploys fear strategically to compel action, assert boundaries, and establish authority, while cultivating respect to stabilize influence and secure enduring compliance. The failure to balance these forces invites instability. Excessive fear produces rebellion. Unchecked respect invites neglect. Mastery resides in the continuous assessment of circumstances, the precise modulation of energy, and the deliberate calibration of the human psyche to align action with strategic design. Deception is not moral corruption, but structural necessity. By guiding perception, managing expectation, and selectively concealing intent, the operator constructs an environment where desired behavior appears inevitable. Truth is disclosed in measured increments, falsehood in calibrated doses, and reality is shaped by what is allowed to be perceived. Compliance is not coerced, but orchestrated, with the mechanics of influence operating beneath the surface of awareness. The practitioner of manipulation does not impose will openly. They engineer conditions in which will conforms naturally. Observation is the foundation of foresight. By attending to minute behavior, subtle speech, and the rhythms of interaction, the strategist discerns intent, weakness, and opportunity invisible to the inattentive. These insights are operational, informing intervention, shaping expectation, and amplifying leverage. Each recognition becomes a tool, each interpretation a point of strategic engagement. Influence is cumulative, constructed through a succession of deliberate adjustments that align perception, constrain choice, and guide action toward preordained outcomes. Ambition is both energy and risk. Left unchecked, it disrupts. Guided with precision, it consolidates power. The operator channels desire, structures opportunity, and aligns personal goals with strategic imperatives. Incentives are deployed with meticulous care, constraints are anticipated, and perception is orchestrated to ensure that human energy flows in predictable, advantageous channels. The currents of aspiration are neither suppressed nor feared. They are directed, harnessed, and transformed into instruments of authority. Betrayal is inevitable, yet manageable. Those who presume constancy in the loyalty of others mistake human nature for idealism. Every allegiance is conditional, every commitment provisional. The astute operator anticipates the moment when self-interest diverges from expectation and converts potential disruption into leverage. Disloyalty becomes a data point, treachery a mechanism for recalibration, and deviation an input into the architecture of control. One survives betrayal not by denying it, but by anticipating, integrating, and converting it into strategic advantage. Influence is layered and systemic. It operates through networks, dependencies, and perception, producing compliance that is often invisible yet enduring. Control is reinforced by expectation, behavior is guided by subtle environmental cues, and obedience emerges not from overt imposition, but from the conditioning of choice. The operator constructs these layers with deliberate care, recognizing that the most enduring power is both pervasive and often undetectable, operating seamlessly through the structures of relationship, opportunity, and perception. Knowledge transforms into authority only through action. Insight, anticipation, and intervention convert understanding into leverage. Decisions are deliberate, not reactive. Interventions are calibrated, not impulsive. Each engagement is measured, each hesitation noted, each response analyzed. Mastery is the disciplined accumulation of advantage, the relentless orchestration of perception, and the alignment of behavior with strategic intent. Power is sustained through the continuous application of knowledge to the mutable landscape of human ambition, fear, and desire. Perception is the conduit of authority, to be deferred to obeyed, or feared requires the careful shaping of what is seen and believed. Presence is engineered, gestures are calibrated, and decisions communicate inevitability. Through the management of perception, the operator channels behavior without direct coercion, aligning action with design, and ensuring that influence propagates through networks, dependencies, and expectation. Mastery is the seamless integration of intent with perception, producing compliance that is as natural as it is effective. Every choice, every gesture, every word carries consequence. The human environment is complex, volatile, and guided by shifting motives and interests. Navigating it demands continuous awareness, disciplined patience, and strategic foresight. There is no respite from calculation. There is no immunity from outcome. Authority and survival are secured through relentless observation, precise orchestration, and anticipatory intervention, ensuring that events unfold according to design and that advantage is maintained across both immediate and extended horizons. Influence is pervasive and invisible, extending through expectation, perception, and conditioned behavior. Compliance is achieved not by domination, but by the subtle alignment of desire with circumstance. The operator constructs the environment meticulously, integrating layers of influence to ensure that outcomes conform to intent before overt action is required. The mastery of power is measured in durability, subtlety, and the predictability of behavior across temporal and relational dimensions. And so, in the quiet after the storm of calculation and maneuver, the truth stands bare. Power is neither kind nor cruel, it is the law of action and consequence, the currency of anticipation, and the architecture of foresight. The ruler who survives is neither the most virtuous nor the most adored. The ruler who endures is the one who comprehends the machinery of human desire, the silent currents of fear, and the shifting loyalties that govern every interaction. Every smile may conceal intent, every gesture may contain leverage, every alliance may hide divergence, and yet, within this perpetual uncertainty, mastery is possible. Those who wield influence with clarity do not flinch at deception, do not hesitate at betrayal, and do not mistake morality for strategy. They act with calm precision, moving unseen threads, guiding ambition, and converting chaos into order. They understand that loyalty is temporary, that fear must be measured, and that perception is the medium through which authority flows. They see the world as it is, not as it should be, and in that unflinching gaze, they find freedom not from struggle, but from illusion. In the end, the landscape of power is both mirror and map. It reflects the ambition and vice of those who traverse it, and it charts the path for those willing to understand its laws. To ignore it is to be used. To confront it is to command. Manipulation is neither sin nor virtue. It is the language of influence, the hidden grammar of human interaction, and the tool by which one shapes destiny. Learn it, wield it, and survive. For the world does not reward hesitation, innocence, or naivety. It rewards understanding. It rewards precision. It rewards those who move deliberately, who act knowingly, and who see the machinery of control for what it is, inexorable, relentless, and unyielding. Let this be the reckoning. To command is to accept that the world is not bound by morality but by consequence, that human hearts bend to fear and desire before principle, that every action is a calculation and every silence is an instrument. To navigate this realm is to embrace clarity without compassion, to orchestrate without sentiment, to endure without illusion. And in this mastery lies not glory, not praise, but the immutable survival of those who understand that in business, in politics, and in life itself, manipulation is the hidden language, and only those fluent in it speak with authority and shape the world according to their will.